right, we're going to give a warm welcome now to our next guest, Kristin Smith, president of the Solana Policy Institute. Kristin, how are you today?
I'm good. Nice to hear your voice.
Nice to hear yours, Kristin. And there's never a dull moment in the world of crypto. This week, Congress introducing a bipartisan bill entitled Promoting Innovation and Blockchain Development Act. Talk to us about this bill and what it proposes.
Yeah, well, we've had a lot of conversations about the legislation that's been moving through Congress. And this week we saw the introduction of yet another bill. This one is actually quite narrow in its scope. It focuses on protecting software developers who are, writing the code for our new financial system from being persecuted under a section of the criminal code known as 1960, which is a money laundering statute that was never designed for open source code development, but has created some legal uncertainty for builders working in good faith. And so, we've seen in the past that the threat of this criminal liability can be chilling to innovation, where what happens is some of these software developers decide to work overseas instead of here in the United States. And so, we want to protect these developers because they're an important part of creating our new financial system. So this isn't about avoiding regulation, but we want to ensure that we regulate the right actors and distinguish the good faith builders from the bad actors in this space. So we were very excited to see that bipartisan bill introduced in the House and are hopeful that this is something that can be included in the broader market structure legislation that we've been talking about here every couple of weeks.
Kristin, how big of an issue was the potential for good faith developers to get caught up in money laundering investigations? How big of an issue is
it was
this?
Actually a very big deal during the last administration. I've talked to several founders and CEOs of software development companies that were under investigation by the DOJ for this. And it's very confusing because it's very inconsistent with the way that the Treasury Department, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, their definition of money transmitting varies slightly. And so this led to an issue, and it's one of the reasons why Roman Storm was charged and found guilty earlier this year. And so this is a problem. And, I think if you drive a car to go rob a bank, we don't necessarily blame the manufacturer of the car or the designer of the car for that crime. We go after the criminal. And so I think there are some really unique features of blockchains that makes it easy to catch the bad guys, but we need to make sure that we have the liability in the right place.
We're speaking with Kristin Smith, president of the Solana Policy Institute. And Kristin, you wrote an op-ed for CoinDesk about this bill being introduced. Talk to us about what you said in the op-ed and why you tied it to America's 250-year celebrations.
If you think about it, every American decade and century has been defined by infrastructure. Sometimes it's transportation, like canals and roads, or perhaps the internet. In all of these instances, it's the country that builds the infrastructure first that sets the global standard. And I do think that we are at an inflection point again, except now this infrastructure is the code upon which our financial system is going to be based. And so, as I mentioned before, our developers are very mobile, and this legislation lets the software developers, the builders of this code, know that the United States is the home and that they deserve the same freedoms that previous generations of American innovators have had. And so, we do think this is a fundamental issue going forward, and we're excited to see Congress introduce legislation around this topic.
Let's switch gears for a second and talk about the State of the Union address, which really covered quite a wide range of priorities for the president. We thought we might get to hear a little bit about crypto. What were your takeaways from the State of the Union address this week?
We were certainly hopeful that there might have been a mention because there has never been a mention of crypto in a State of the Union address. But I think this is one of those situations where actions speak louder than words. If you look over the past year, President Trump has made tremendous strides towards providing regulatory clarity for digital assets. He notably signed the Genius Act into law last summer, and he has a team at the White House of David Sachs and Patrick Witt that are working on these issues on a nearly daily basis. If you look at the regulatory agencies, the SEC and the CFTC, they are embarking on Project Crypto to use the authority they have to provide some clarity. So I think I'm very optimistic about the work that is ongoing now, and certainly, excited by how far the progress has been made in the past year. So yes, actions speak louder than words, and we are seeing real action here.
We're speaking with Kristin Smith, president of the Solana Policy Institute, getting the latest on the world of crypto. A new resource just launched, payments.org. It's aimed at enterprises, fintechs, institutions who want to explore blockchain-based payment infrastructure. Talk to us about this resource, what it does, and why it's important.
Yeah, well, I think with the passage of the Genius Act into law, we're seeing a proliferation of announcements across different companies around stablecoins, and there is a fresh look at using blockchains as the payment rails for the next generation of payments. And so traditional payment rails are expensive and slow. We have credit card fees, wire transfer costs, settlements delays. But businesses and consumers are now demanding better. They want these payments 24/7. They want instant settlement. They want lower costs. And stablecoins solve this. They settle in a fraction of a second compared to traditional payments. And so, the Genius Act has put the framework in place that allow for organizations to build stablecoins and integrate within the global payment system. And so, Solana is a blockchain, that has processed over $1 trillion in stablecoin volume in 2025 and is one of the world's top 10 stablecoins for being issued natively on Solana. And so, we're seeing folks like Visa, PayPal, Stripe, Western Union already building on this infrastructure, and that we have $2 trillion in quarterly stablecoin transfers happening right now this quarter. So I think it's a great resource for those who are looking to learn more and go deeper into understanding how stablecoins are going to be integrated within and upgrading our payment system.
Kristin, is there anything else that's new or interesting right now in the world of crypto that we haven't had a chance to catch up on this week?
Well, the one major issue that we alluded to earlier is that, Congress and the White House are actively engaged in market structure legislation. This is the big regulatory framework that would provide regulatory oversight for the crypto markets. And one of the issues that has sort of slowed down the progress this spring is a disagreement between the crypto companies and the banks over whether or not consumers should be able to have rewards for holding stable coins. The White House has held 3 meetings right now with industry on both sides of crypto and the banks in an effort to broker a deal. And the OCC this week released proposed rulemaking related to the Genius Act that addresses this issue as well. So, these conversations are ongoing. This is an incredibly important piece of legislation. It's also an incredibly complicated piece of legislation. And so, we appreciate, at Solana Policy Institute, all the work that's being done. And, we're hopeful that we'll see some movement on this massive framework sometime this spring.
All right. Thanks again, Kristin, for joining us. Tell us where we can learn more about the Solana Policy Institute and its work and where we can engage with you.
Yeah, you can find out more at solanapolicyinstitute.org, or you can follow me on X at Kristin Smith.
And that's Kristin Smith, president of the Solana Policy Institute.